corruption. We'll be looking at corruption, especially looking at the iron sheet saga that was happening this week, a scandal really that is very bad. I'll be giving you the details of that, but also we'll also be looking at external labor movement. This week or last week, Solomon Serwanja under the AGIIJ, that is the African Institute for Investigative Journalism, tried to put out a video talking about how gruesome some of these things are. But the two gentlemen we have today will be speaking into that. I have Francis, who is coming in as the coordinator of the Alliance for National Transformation from the US, and also Boaz, who is coming in as the coordinator of the Alliance of Transformation in Germany there. I'll start with Francis. Francis, I don't know what time it is there, but I hope it is you're well and you're healthy. I'll start with you. How are you? How is it treating you there? And how is life out there? How long have you been away?
Oh, thank you, Timothy, and fellow panelists and viewers and fellow Ugandans. My name is Francis Kamuhanda. I'm the ANT Diaspora Coordinator for the USA chapter. And it is cold here, we are in winter, but we are hanging on. And I have been away from Uganda for now 5 years. But I'm always closely following up conversations back home and what is happening at the grassroots level. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Another gentleman is no stranger, also a coordinator of the Alliance for National Transformation in Germany there. Boaz, it's good to see you. How are you? How is life there? Uganda, we talk about a general sauna for everyone here. I don't know how the weather is in Germany, but greet us and then we'll be able to dig into our conversation.
Thank you so much, Timothy. My name is Boaz Murinzi, and again, I'm the coordinator here in Germany, but also in Central Europe. We are not having a sauna, unfortunately. It's as well cold. It's a winter season, but all in all, we are well and grateful to, to know how you are doing and that you're enjoying the sun, which we hardly appreciate as Ugandans most of the times.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you for introducing yourselves. Let's dig in. Yesterday, a by-election happened in Serere. That is where we would like to start. One of our candidates there, the acting national coordinator, Honorable Alisa Lasso, yesterday was part of that by-election. The by-election being won by the late Patrick Okabe's son there, Emmanuel Omoding, winning it by about 17,000 votes. And also the NRM Philip flag bearer there coming in with 12,000 there, but our candidate came out with 3,000 votes at that. But let me start from your view, Boaz. Where do you see the state of our nation? In your view, from the diaspora, what is the state of nation as you look at it here going forward?
Thank you very much. I have been sometimes not able to follow the news, but the times I have been able to engage on Twitter and also some of our leaders who are on the ground. Also listening to some other sources, we cannot at all be assured of democratic processes in this country, which we also have observed in Serere. The characteristics of our election processes in Uganda are still being repeated again and again. So for me, this process of finding a new leader for Serere was just proof that each one of us as parties, as leadership aspirants, we cannot be assured of a fair process in the event that actually the ruling government continues to use state machinery, state resources, and even state forces to hinder anyone else to fairly be in an electoral process. So indeed, I am more than grateful for the voters out there in Serere who voted us, who voted our candidate, the Honorable Ali Salaso. However, I'm also extremely sad and astonished at the behavior and acts of the ruling government and the measure and the level of intimidation that they portrayed at different polling stations that even included ballot stuffing and pre-ticking of the ballot papers, that we also saw that electorates, actually some of them were dismantled publicly. And this is one of the examples that we actually did not get a fair election process in Serere. Nonetheless, I'm again thankful for each and everyone that supported us and each and everyone that is still standing with us. And this result for me tantamounts to the reality of hey, we cannot stand down. Even amidst all these challenges, we cannot just give up and say, hey, we give up now, and we need to reorganize, we need to be more active, especially on the ground. Yeah, that's my take.
Thank you, Boaz. Francis, let me come to you. In your view, over this year, we're just about 2 months into it. What do you view as the state of our nation? What is the state of nation in your view in the diaspora? But also, what were your thoughts about the by-election in Serere there? And we'll be picking learning points later on there.
Oh, thank you, Timothy and Boaz, for your submission. And this is a good question. Asking me the state of our nation, what comes into my mind is going back to the preamble of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. The 1995 preamble Constitution explains how there was failure of institutions of government, name it education, health, legislation, security, name all those sectors. That's what comes into my mind, that again, it has come to pass that we are again going back to this same situation. Now, again, in the same preamble, it stipulates very well that the democracy, the people of Uganda had been defranchised. We could not exercise our democratic rights. This is also an unfolding now when it comes to the election that was concluded yesterday. You are seeing how the state machinery came into play. You would think that polling stations are police and army barracks. People were not allowed to exercise their constitutional rights of voting. So all these just show, I would say, a government that is in panic. And I have always said that the movement government, in terms of democracy, behaves like, as how the African saying goes, behaves like a monkey, that every time it climbs higher a tree, it ends up exposing its nakedness. This was exposed in the elections that we recently concluded. Yes, we had a good candidate, a tested leader, and we have always said that we want leaders who have values, we want leaders who are transparent, we want leaders who are accountable to the electorate, of which all these attributes our candidate Ali Salaso had. But because of the dynamics of the state machinery, then we were not able to make it. I do congratulate Honorable Murinzi for being voted to serve the people of Serere. But again, at the same time, I would say in Uganda, we have ushered in a bad vice. The politics of where we are giving people sympathy vote, or we are degenerating into more or less like hegemony, or something like, I would say, traditional kind of leadership, which is not close to what we call democracy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I want to invite the people that I see online. So I see here Emma. Thank you very much. Massa, I also see you here. I also want to thank Alan Tumsime, thank you very much for being with us. I also see John there. Thank you very much for being with us. I've also seen Mulindwa Walid there, the youth leader of the Forum for Democratic Change. Thank you very much for joining us. You can be part of the conversation. Go into our chat box, drop your comment there on anything you think about that we're going to discuss, and then we'll be able to engage in that. We're going to look at two focal topics here. One is corruption. The second one is exploitation of labor here. As we speak, Solomon Serwanja put out a story. It was stopped from putting out the story about the plight of externalization of labor, but also we want to talk about corruption, especially looking at what happened with the Iron Sheet saga. It is very, very absurd that what happened. I'll be giving you context and details of that. But let me get to the gentleman here. Can the electoral process in this country improve, and how? I'll start with you, Francis, then I'll go on to Boaz there. Can it improve, and what needs to happen for it to improve? Because it seems the people of Serere made a different choice, yet you're saying there was an alternative that makes sense there. Why did they go this way and not that way, and how do we improve these processes?
Oh, thank you for this wonderful question. Timothy, one of the things that we have to realize as Uganda, if we are to transform our country, I would begin from, let me first leave the government apart and the leadership. Let me come to the electorate. Let me come to the local population. There is lack of civic education. There is lack of Ugandans understanding that we own our country, that the country is ours and it is our responsibility to build it in terms of what we want it to be, or to define its destination. And once the Ugandans or citizens realize that we own the country and we have to be part of this process, then nobody will come to bribe us. Nobody will come to think that we have to look up to either the president or any leader as the sole provider. For us to first realize our constitutional right or our role as citizens. I see that as something that is fundamental to be done. Now, after realizing that and then knowing that people that we are putting into leadership, technically they are our servants, not our bosses. Then we move from there, then we usher them. Then we come to systems. Now systems where we need to put also people who are credible, establishing like an electoral commission that is independent, that is not influenced or elected by maybe the president, or who are surviving at the mercy of the president, and at any time, like you saw the circumstances under which the former EC chairperson, or traditionally the electoral commission chairpersons that Uganda has had, they are all just elected, or I mean, they are just put there by a president. So how do you think that those ones are going to conduct a free and fair election? Because somebody who gave them then is the same person who can again take it away. So to see that for them to take themselves to be in those offices as a privilege, a courtesy of someone, and not like serving, they are in a public service, serving everybody, is a challenge in its own. And then too, the third one, in civic education, the biggest population, even including some of the people, the members of parliament, when they are campaigning, I always follow closely. Most of them don't know even the role of the member of parliament. That's why you find them saying, I will build for you roads. I will do this. They promise heaven and earth. I will build a hospital. And yet that is not even close to the role of the member of parliament, who is supposed to do an oversight role, who is supposed to make laws, who is supposed to go and ensure that services that are promised people on ground are supervised and there is effective like service delivery and so on. But you find them making all these promises and people are clapping. And then when it comes to voter bribery, people not knowing their value or their value as citizens. Somebody's giving them 1,000 Ugandan shillings, 2,000, 5,000. They are selling, they're enslaving now themselves for the next 5 years or so. And so that has to stop, and we usher in. That's why as ANT, we believe in grassroots mobilization, teaching the people to first understand who they are, that they are not secondary citizens of Uganda, but they are primary citizens. And if Uganda is to be transformed, it has to begin with them. So understanding that role as a citizen and what is your role is key. And then you can stand and speak and then try to diffuse all these machineries that the state unleashes to subdue our, to defranchise Ugandan. That's what I can say for now.
Thank you very much, Francis. I see in Tambi, I also see Sarah and Rebecca. Thank you for joining our spaces here. The conversation is with our two gentlemen that are in the diaspora, Francis and Boaz, both of them and coordinators that are in the US and Germany, respectively. We're having a conversation about the by-election that happened, but also we'll be transitioning into corruption and finally end our conversation at 6:30 with labor externalization. Those are the biggest topics. Francis, let me come, Boaz, let me come to you and let's have this conversation. One of the things Francis has said is that we go for, and goes for grassroots campaigns and trying to get people there. Did it fail in Serere, and why did it fail? But also, how do we improve the electoral processes? He has talked about civic education, also building our country and all of us being together there, and also about knowing the value we have. Let's put it real. The numbers of people that have dropped into the poverty line under $1 in this country has even gone tremendously there. Is this a realistic goal, or are we being too ambitious as a country? Boaz, over.
Thank you so much, Timothy. Again, thank you, Francis, for the wisdom that you've just shared. The first question is, did actually, or when did democratic processes become hereditary? This is a huge question that we have to put in front of us as Ugandans. Since when did it become an automatic process that if a leader passes on, because we know not any Ugandan I have experienced has stepped down from their leadership role willingly. Most of them have died. And if someone dies, sadly, as we lost many leaders in the past 3 years, how or who defined or who decided that it should always be hereditary? Do those people that take over leadership from their parents have what it takes, to carry on the roles and the responsibilities of a member of parliament or of a leadership level, whichever level it is, even if it is on an LC1 level? So for me, this is a question that I want to pose to all of us as Ugandans. Secondly, about civic education, why did the government or the Ministry of Education, together with the ruling government, scrap political education off the Ugandan curriculum? What was the intention, right? So before we even talk about civic education, which many organizations are trying to do, but still are being stopped, by different actors of the government, let's ask ourselves, what was the intention of scrapping of the political education subject from the Ugandan curriculum? Then we also have to be aware that keeping people ignorant, keeping all of us as Ugandans unaware, ignorant of our own rights and political rights and responsibilities, it denies us the opportunity to even fully participate in an electoral process that actually is supposed to end up giving us, a leader that is supposed to serve us. But instead, which we've observed all the time, instead, many of our leaders make our people, both in urban areas and also in rural areas, think that they are doing us a favor. to be in an elected position. But as my brother Francis has mentioned, being in a political position where you've been elected by people, if anyway you've been elected, you know, you are an employee. In me as Boaz, I cannot be in any office right now, political office right now in Uganda, because I'm not there. So if I get an opportunity to vote somebody into a role to represent me, they're actually doing a job for me. So in the event that they don't do the job for me, I should be able to say, hey, please step down. I need to, you know, responsibilize somebody else. So this is something that we as Ugandans need to know, not because someone is promising to build roads, is someone promising to start circles for us, to give us, you know, scholarships for our children's school fees, or even to buy ambulances. That is not the job of any elected leader. That is a job of the government. And that's why we have taxes. That's why we have different forms of income, and also the state budget. So to that, I really would like to mention that this country's transformation, and which the ANT has been doing also on the grassroots level, teaching people or educating people and sensitizing them about their political rights and responsibilities in line or in the stake of what is their civic duty. I would like to also mention that Uganda's culture of not practicing democratic processes as they're supposed to be is a very sad one, because we are barring the country, we are barring the nation's future, in the sense that most of the people have not had any interest anymore to participate. Because I talked to someone who was in Uganda 2 days ago, and they said, no, I know that I vote, I'm from Serere, but I do not have any interest to go to vote, because we know who is going to win. So if we have constantly people who mention or who feel that they cannot participate because they know who is going to win, or who is going to be, or who is supported by the state, you know, it makes it a little bit difficult for us to even hope that in the future there will be any change. However, I want to encourage Ugandans, I want to encourage all of us, all the time there is an opportunity to go and vote, please do it. On the issue of, you mentioned on the issue of corruption and the state of a corrupt nation.
Boaz, please help me unmute your spaces so that you can be able to go on there.
I'm not sure whether are you having background noise? Okay, great. Did you all know that Uganda is the 142nd most corrupt country from the 180 countries? And we are going really much more worse from the last 5 years. We can see the trend going down. Why? How can we continue seeing cases of leaders becoming corrupt and we focus on the small fish? If, for example, the Honorable Goreti Chitutu, I'm sorry for pronouncing it wrongly if I did, cannot even publicly say, hey, I will step aside, I will remove myself from my role as a minister, you know, to allow the IGG or to allow authorities to conduct a proper investigation, how then can we expect accountability from such a leader? Because we have seen leaders coming out to demand for her censure. Why should she be censured if she is a person of integrity? She should be able to step aside, as we've seen in many other areas, to enable a proper investigative process. We've had also many other cases that we've seen that the State House Anti-Corruption Unit has been publicly showing us. How about, why are they not even talking about this case? We have not seen, maybe it's me who is ignorant or have not been able to access information in that regard. Why is it that these big people are not even touched, are not even demanded to even called to file like a police, how do you call that? Like a police report on the allegations, right? So I would like to mention that until we start from the top, bottom wise, and stop, pointing fingers at where, yes, it's true that even small cases matter, even small corruption cases are important, and each one of us have to be responsible on not promoting corruption. But when can we actually see our leaders being actively involved in reducing corruption by not participating, but also holding them accountable? We've seen also the president of Uganda publicly, when she shut down the IGG's effort to hold the corrupt officials accountable. I remember the president mentioning of how, you leave those people, at least for them, when they steal government resources, they invest them in Uganda. We don't want them to take these resources out of the country. Is this the country that we would like to build? Is this the country that we would like to continue seeing? And whatever corruption cases that are happening, because we want them to invest in Uganda? How about the person in Katakwi who needs a road constructed, whose money has been misused or swindled by a political leader who should actually now be praised for doing that after they have built a hotel somewhere in Jinja? Indeed, it is robbery, it is theft, stealing from your own people. So in that regard, I would like us to just go back and question the government and question the public authorities on how come they're not holding these big fish accountable publicly, and even demanding them or asking them to step aside, even if it's an allegation or a suspicion that they are held, they are regarded guilty in the case of corruption, that anyone that is suspected to be a corrupt official, they should be regarded guilty until the courts of law prove them to be innocent. So I really, really would like to demand for that. I want us to demand for that. And this is what ANT stands for. ANT stands against corruption. We stand for integrity, we stand for accountability and proper use of state resources in the event that we are responsibilized by Ugandans to be in a leadership role in the future. I would like to stop here right now, and back to you, Timothy.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the conversation. And all those who are on Spaces, thank you very much for being on the Spaces. We see you there. If you have a contribution that you want to make on any of our platforms, please drop your message there. I'll be reading it in a short while there. We're going to switch gears here and focus on corruption and focus on all these things happening with the corrupt in the country there. So the most recent is 39 billion that was set aside for the plight that is happening in Karamoja. This was for iron sheets. 100,000 iron sheets were bought. 12,200 iron sheets got legs. The people that were able to get these iron sheets without any scuffle, and this is factual, one, the Minister of State for Finance, he has agreed. The Vice President of the country, Jessica Lupo, has also agreed that she got the iron sheets. The Prime Minister, Right Honorable Robin Nabanja, has also got those iron sheets. There are quite a number of people, but the biggest is Mary Chitutu Goretti, who is the Minister for Karamoja, who is part of the cabinet there. Her 3 relatives were got with these iron sheets and were arrested. The 12,000 iron sheets disappeared, but also the biggest question, where are the 88,000 iron sheets? Has corruption become something that we're living by, and a cancer that we're now embracing as a country and calling it part of our lives? An audit, lifestyle audit was asked by the IGG. Nothing happened there. The president stopped it. We have the leadership code where all leaders are supposed to submit their wealth to the IGG. Next month, will anything bear fruit in this? But let me give you the numbers that Boaz was talking about. We are 142nd out of 180 countries as of 2020. We're the second most corrupt country in the East African region. So this is where we get to it. A lot of money has been stolen. This country hemorrhages or bleeds about 10 to 20 trillion shillings every year. This is factual from the IGG, and it is that bad. But we have the anti-corruption court, we have IGG, we have the State House Anti-Corruption Unit. What are they doing? So Francis, let me come to you. You who is in the diaspora, a lot of remittances come from the diaspora and come to Uganda here. What's your view on corruption? What are you seeing as corruption in this country? Has it become a cancer that we can't get rid of? Or there are ways to get rid of it?
Thank you, Timothy. Thank you, Boaz, and all our viewers and those who are following us on the different spaces, most especially Twitter. Timothy, I think what I can first say is that it is so unfortunate how far Uganda has gone in as far as corruption is concerned. It is like part and parcel that if you give birth to a child and you are not training them to be corrupt, then they are not Ugandans. That is so unfortunate. And all these are closing doors of even Ugandans elsewhere. I'll give an example. Because of corruption in issuing passports, did you know that that's why the UAE is very skeptical about Uganda? Because they give passports to Nigerians. Now when they cause issues in the UAE, then they end up blackmailing that these are Ugandans. And then even those who would go there to go and work genuinely cannot go there. Otherwise, if they go there, they will just know these are a factor to reckon with. But having said that, I think corruption and embezzlement, for me, I have graduated it. Uganda, they are no longer corrupt. It is looting at an industrial scale. As simple as that. It is no longer corruption. That is looting at an industrial scale. Because, Timothy, let's roll back. You still remember the junk helicopter saga? Government. You still remember the bicycle, the 4.2 billion in 2019? You saw even in the midst of a crisis during COVID-19, what was taking place in the Ministry of Health. So now you remember the Ruvowa Hospital incident, Izimba Dam cracking, and you know the president himself has come on several cases when they were pinning down the Chinese who did the constructions. Oh, leave them, their country is so strict, these people might even be killed. You see that? And then when the lifestyle audit came in, you are aware of NSSF, who are people, most of them, saving their money, but even the officials who are there are busy dividing it amongst themselves. What would help? I'm trying to, now the railway, why our standard gauge railway has not taken a course because of corruption and so on and so forth. Look at all the confusion that has been in UNRA. Look at Entebbe Airport. Name it. Now the iron sheet saga. Look at the radios that were supposed children to use and I don't know, TVs when we were hit by COVID-19. So like the whole of Uganda, sometimes I always take it to be when we are still young, when we would be moving and you come across a rotten mango, you'd use a very small knife to also cut a piece that is still not all that rotten and you eat it and leave the rest. So Uganda has turned into something that I can't even describe in as far as what you are saying, corruption and embezzlement is concerned. But for me, it is not corruption and embezzlement. It is theft at an industrial scale. But what is most disheartening is that we are always blamed, people who are in the diaspora, that we speak ill about our country instead of promoting it. It is simple, Mr. Timothy. Give me a good story that I should tell about my country. Don't also put me into a position like right now, when you meet a person on the street, the only thing the person tells you, oh, the iron sheets saga, you feel embarrassed. Last time it was the NSSF. A person keeps asking, what is wrong with your country? And then those are the conversations. You end up also, maybe you are meeting a legislator somewhere or a potential investor who can go and invest in our country. Those are the stories they are talking about. Why can't you also give us a good story? Why can't good things happen? And then we know that that is the story that is now trending. So to me, if you look at the Anti-Corruption Resource Center, the report they published in 2018, 38% of Ugandans have to pay a bribe to access a public service. Almost half of the Ugandan. Those are the ones now that we are saying are in the middle class, between me and you. But then what about the poor people? That means if 40% approximately have to pay a bribe to access public services, then the poor person like my dad, my grandmother, my aunties and so on, who are in the village, the 60%, because they can't afford that money. So it means they completely don't access any public service. So if they fall sick, they die in silence. And it has become a norm in Uganda that it is normal. The reason is lack of prosecution. Lack of prosecution, to say that once we have gotten these people, they should go and serve. In some of these countries where we are, when they get a person who is corrupt, one, they will try the person publicly for everybody to see them, and they get humiliated. Then two, they will give them a sentence that every other person who has appetite for corruption, not corruption, for industrial theft, will lose it. But for Uganda, the big wig will come and support them. You see, when the Prime Minister ever talked about the blanket saga, you still remember, she went in one of the districts in Uganda and then was talking about it. They came for her, and I think that's where she also decided to join the club, not to fight the vice. So to me, I believe that the leadership is a factor that we need to deal with, but also the masses. But the whole question would be, okay, even when I'm being asked for a bribe, who am I going to report to? Then I would say the corruption scandal is more or less of a cartel. I'm forced to believe that all these people who are corrupt and so on, they must be having a club somewhere. I'm forced to believe that Uganda is being ruled by a cartel. Because, Timothy, we should agree, when you come to, let me even talk about the NSSF. Let me leave these ministers that are now involved in the iron sheet scandal, because the president put it clear that these are fishermen, and I don't know, he just picked them. Let me leave them, but let me go to the NSSF. You look at the staff, if you look at the people who are there, highly educated, highly technical people who should be really knowing where our country should be heading and which country we need to build. But look at what they are doing. Look at what they are doing. But for me, the most important thing is that even when you hand them to police, when you hand them to IGG, when you hand them to the judicial system, everything in simple terms is because of the collapse of the institutions of government that are supposed to play their role to bring in the checks and balances. All those collapse, and then that's why you see whatever everybody holds on and then is running with that. It's more or less like Ugandans, those who are in leadership, are trying to do I will not call it partition and scramble and partition of Uganda, but I don't know how I can term it, but it is more like there is a mad rush in Uganda to amass and grab as much as public property, public wealth, as much as you can. That's why you are seeing even land itself. That's a country like Uganda, sincerely. You have internally displaced people whom by design your corrupt system has decided to displace them. And let me tell you, if a country as our population goes on doubling every other time, we can't plan. I highly suspect that by the time we hit the year, maybe 2050, our population may reach approximately even 80 million. But have we tried to plan for that? The answer is no. Then, instead we are creating more, already people are angry because the country is divided. It is either, Mr. Timothy, to deal with angry people because you can go and reconcile with them. You can go and have a dialogue with them, but it is very difficult to deal with angry people who are at the same time hungry, who are on empty stomachs. They know after all they might die. So that is a time bomb for Uganda. That's what I might say. And all these are intertwined in one war or another into what I'm telling you as the theft that is in Uganda amongst public servants, amongst politicians at an industrial scale. Thank you.
Francis, thank you very much for your responses. For those that have just joined us, thank you for joining us both on Spaces and all other platforms there. You can send your feedback through. We'll be getting into that part. What do you think about corruption in this country, especially looking at the iron sheet scandal that has many of the ministers involved there? But as Francis said, the president called them fishermen. We don't know if they were fishing for the iron sheets or this is part of the fishing expedition they're up to there. But let me come to you, Boaz. Why are we failing to curb corruption? That's one question there, but also looking at the recovery and looking at what the IGG is talking about, we seem to have no institution taking ownership. She was thumb chasing our Honorable Betty Kamia that she had recovered 10 billion. If we're losing 10 trillion and you're recovering 10 billion, really, are we supposed to be thumb chasing or clapping for you there? Where are we failing to curb corruption, and how can citizens get involved in this?
Thank you so much, Timothy. For me, what I'm observing in Uganda is that there is absolutely enough resources to run the state budget or the nation's budget every single year. In fact, I would like to, if I had access to foreign funders, to whoever that funds the Ugandan budget, I would encourage them not to fund anything of Uganda. I am not at all a hater of my country. I love my country. I am Ugandan. I go around, carrying this hat or this cape all over, and people here see of how Ugandan I am. Germans don't even carry their flag. They don't even, because of historical reasons, but I'm a proud Ugandan. And for that, I would encourage that foreign funders stop funding Ugandan projects. Instead, until the Ugandan government has put our own resources to proper use, until that moment when there will be no single case of corruption, especially on the government level, not these small cases, then that's when we can even start having a conversation of how can we fund Ugandan projects or Ugandan government-led activities. I cannot give you any remedy of how the swindled resources can be got back by the IGG's office, because she herself, she has limitation, or her office has limitations. And I believe if she tries to push for it, she knows what might happen in the due course. So for me, I believe that it is a responsibility of each Ugandan to hold people accountable, to demand that all these leaders that have been even assumed to be corrupt, that they are held accountable, that they are brought to book. But this, of course, does not take just me as a civilian Ugandan, it takes even the courts of law. You know, if the government does, or the president does not involve himself in such processes, then we can have resources to be called back from these political figures. Other than that, I don't think we can achieve any restoration of the stolen resources from those officers who actually are always going to be innocent until proven guilty. And again, I want to go back that we should only focus on holding every single figure or person accountable, and also identifying them as guilty for being corrupt until they've been proven innocent. This is the only way we can have them to be accountable. Plus, the moment someone is assumed to be corrupt, that the government freezes all their properties. But then they cannot freeze their properties, they cannot freeze their bank accounts, because we know most of these corrupt officials, they put these bank accounts in the names of their wives, or properties in the names of their children, and so on. So it is even harder also, or even relatives that are not directly connected to them. So it is even harder for the IG's office to track most of these resources, the stolen state resources. So that's why, for me, again, I mentioned that we should go back to encouraging foreign funders to stop funding Ugandan projects, not to fund them until there has been no case of corruption. That is where we should be as a country, to restore sanity. And I would like also to mention that the NRM government itself, it's filled with corrupt officials, and they know that. But why are they actually not acting? You should ask yourself, which kind of moral authority would they have if they know that their big leaders are also themselves not being held accountable? How will they be able to speak to the power if they know that the same power is the one that is choosing them and appointing them, including the judiciary, right? So please, Ugandans and the fellow listeners on this platform or all the other platforms, let's try and hold our leaders and hold this government accountable. And the ANT is very clear about this on our values. We do not at all have an in-between solution. You're either accountable, or not. And this is where we stand as a party. And I would like to encourage whoever is listening in, and all the people that will listen in later on the pre-recorded files, please interest yourselves in demanding accountability. I come from Ntungamo originally, but it is also very hard for me to even know how much tax has been collected in Ntungamo, versus how much is being spent. I can also not fully track why there's some projects that receive funding, but then you don't even see the money on the ground. You don't see the value of money on the ground. Who of us knows how to track all those projects that are planned by the Uganda National Roads Authority, and the quality, pre-checks? Who checks that quality? Who goes back to say, as a citizen of Uganda, you had planned to build a road that is these millimeters, but I see you've built only 5 millimeters instead of 15 millimeters. What happened to the other 10? What happened to the money that was planned for the 10 millimeters, per square kilometer? So all these accountability, we cannot achieve a corruption-free country if there is no proper accountability in practice. And to that, we have to also teach our children in schools, restoration of political education and civic education in schools, or even when we go in our villages, we should be talking to our people, educating our people about the political and roles and responsibilities, but also what is their civic duty in ensuring that we have a corruption-free country. So this is, for me, a very important part of our rebuilding this nation, which the ANT, of course, offers with many different leaders, experienced leaders, and also our own values and our own constitution as a party places that very much at the forefront. You mentioned also, Timothy, about the recent situation that we saw, how the police simply was able to stop the launching of this video that Solomon Seranja and his organization were launching, at Mestil recently. I think this is last week. I was live on the Twitter Spaces. First of all, there is absolutely, historically, there's nothing like this has happened. Why did it happen at a moment when externalization of labor is being questioned? At a moment when we see that there are very many problems that are happening associating with externalization of labor. Why do we even have such a huge number of unemployed persons in Uganda? What is the job of this government? Why should we have our people, both literate and semi-literate and illiterate, go out of the country to look for better opportunities, like myself or many other persons, And what was the government or what was the police trying to hide? This is a question that we have to ask ourselves. I haven't understood why should the organization of Solomon Seranja get permission from the police force of Uganda? Why should that be the case? Why is it that other events were not or are not demanded to produce permission from the police or even from the Ministry of Labor? What is again being hidden about this whole situation of externalization of labor? All the money that all of us, including myself, my family is in Uganda, are sending back home. We're trying to build this country together with every Ugandan that is even living in Uganda. But do we even know where it ends? We're trying to send in or to remit a lot of resources supporting different projects. But who actually, in whose hands does it land? We know that also the Bank of Uganda knows the data of how much money comes in every single year in this country. But who actually can we responsibilize on making sure that the lives of Ugandans, of those Ugandans who go abroad, are protected? They're protected by law through our bilateral agreements with these countries where the Ugandans are going. Because if there is no proper bilateral agreement that protects a Ugandan, that remits resources to Uganda, the other country, anything can happen to Ugandan and nothing happens. No one is held accountable, right? So I would like, again, to ask the government of Uganda, which has failed to provide employment for Ugandans, why then don't you just actually try to protect Ugandans bilaterally who are going abroad to work, who are sending in a lot of remittances every single year, right? So this is a question that I want also to pose to the government. If there's anyone listening in from the government, I very much want to pose this question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that, Boaz there. We're getting into the last leg there of our conversation here. You can be part of this conversation. Just get on any of those platforms and drop your message. I see some messages coming through. We'll be addressing those in the last 5 minutes. But let's switch gears a bit here and look at what already Boaz has introduced us to. And let me give you some numbers here. According to Bank of Uganda in 2016-2017, remittances from out of this country, especially in the Middle East, contributed 25%. They rank second after Europe and North America. So Europe and North America, Europe comes first, then North America, then the Middle East. The Middle East alone contributes 1.2 billion dollars there, and that's about 4 trillion shillings, Uganda shillings there. And we're looking at all these remittances coming in. One of the things that I was online, and I also had a conversation yesterday with Solomon Serwanja, just to get context of that. I watched the conversation that they had, and also the recording, and also the plight of the young girls that go there, and what happens to them, how they're abused, and some that have come back and have lost their lives there. And statistics by Civil Aviation Authority show that we have between 300 and 500 young people that leave this country every day. Last year was the biggest, about 64,000 young people left this country. If a population that is young in this country, 75% are under 35, what is happening? Why isn't government doing enough? I also want to bring to context a conversation that Solomon had with the Honorable Okello Oryem about the foreign policy of this country. Unfortunately, Uganda doesn't have. So let me come to you, Francis, even as we get into this. Your thoughts on our labor export, your thoughts on what is happening with our market, why young people cannot get employed in this country. We'll be getting into those numbers, but give us your thoughts, and then I'll be getting to Boaz there.
Thank you, Timothy. Thank you again, Boaz, and our viewers and listeners on different platforms. Timothy, when we talk about labor externalization, it's not a bad thing. Like for people to go abroad, then they go and work. Because we are all contributing towards national building. But the question is, this country that we are contributing or building, are we equal shareholders? Or are we treated as equal shareholders in this country? Or we are treated as secondary citizens? Because if we are treated as equal shareholders, then you find the Minister of Gender, Labor and Social Development would have either bilateral agreements with the countries where we are going that protect our labor rights, or first as citizens of Uganda or ambassadors of Uganda representing Uganda in those countries where we have gone. And then these guidelines would also be in position to regulate people who are using this opportunity to abuse labor externalization. Because, Timothy, I would challenge government that yes, they have given us a list of over 160 something labor exporting agencies. Can they be able to publish for us also the owners and the board or the board of governors for those organizations or agencies, because they are dealing with the life of human beings, so that we know them. Then when they come to these guidelines, because there is nothing for us without us, we people who are either outside, and we have an opportunity to participate and knowing what is in these guidelines, because we are the people facing issues wherever we are or where these people are in the Middle East and so on. So that all these things are very clear. But also, for any government that is sane, it would ask itself, why am I exporting outside? What would be an asset for my country every day at a tune of 300 people? What has gone wrong? Do I need to address the unemployment? What is the leading cause of this unemployment? And so on. When they go there, they go through all these traumas and these horrible conditions. When they come back, if there is no means of rehabilitating them, isn't that a time bomb in itself? Isn't that a time bomb in itself to say, okay, when they come back, if we don't know what they have gone through, right? If we don't know what they have gone through, so when they come back, we are only looking at how much has come from them. You even don't know how they have made that money. But for you are checking, this has come. And then when it comes, those who have had an opportunity to serve in NSSF, you are busy eating and enjoying. So it's not something that really is good to emulate. So I remember when the guideline came out, I think it has been under review. I don't know for now how many years that I even lost interest and track. But the most important thing is for me to say that there is nothing for us without us. Now, government itself should be taking interest, of course, because some of these things we don't have them that are very clear. If we are battling with what you are calling corruption in Uganda, but I'm calling it industrial theft at industrial scale, is like looking at the salary itself. Like for us, government would take interest, for example, in knowing what are the terms and conditions. What do we need to improve in the protection gaps in these contracts that our people sign? And the agencies should always give accountability of every person they have sent outside, their condition, and giving even a report to their parents or to their relatives. So that wherever they are going, they are being enslaved in some of these houses. People should know on a daily basis. So that if I say that, look here, Timothy, I'm your brother, where I am currently, I'm being mistreated, then the agency can directly say, no, that is not what is stipulated in the agreement here. So we are either saying Francis has to come back, not that even my passport has been confiscated and so on and so forth. So all these should come into play, understanding the abuses that these people are going through, the kind of exploitation that they are going through. And some of them, by the way, it is alleged, those who have alleged, you must have seen those news, Timothy. Those who they have gone ahead, they say some body parts were extracted. And then they say they had an accident. But if somebody has had an accident, like Timothy, your brother, and they have not reported to you, and only for you to discover when I'm being pushed back home, when I'm more like an imbecile. But you don't know that maybe you have been informed, your brother Francis has had an accident and this is how the whole thing is going. If need be, even that company should transport you, Timothy, to come and find me in the hospital where I am. Because you need to know as my relative. So all these need to be sorted out. And once we do that, because I have said there is nothing for us, people who are outside without us. We have to participate in these processes. And then there comes our embassies, who are just living a luxurious life outside there without exactly knowing what they are supposed to do. You know, these days with the data management, if an organization has sent workers outside, let them submit who are those people, where do they come from, and so on. That's why we have the national IDs, the NIN number. And then once in a while, like at random, the Minister of Gender can have an opportunity to say, I have their telephone contacts that they are going to use there. At random, Minister of Gender can just speak on any number of any person. Then they should not say that because I'm owned by a certain Arab in his house, they don't even allow me to talk. A minister can call at random who a person responsible. Hello, are you talking? Am I talking to Francis? This is the Minister of Gender, Labor and Social Development. I'm checking in. How is your well-being? Just sample 2 or 3 people. You will get to know, and then you put some of these to task, so that we know that our people are not damaged outside there and they come back where they have mental issues, and then we begin dealing with them back at home, even when we don't have the infrastructure that can really take care of this. Or if the embassies are understaffed, then the government should see how do they equip these embassies to be able to attend to the plight of the Ugandans. I will give you an example. You must have heard of a saga of one of the Americans who went to Germany. Let me not use that one. Let me use the boys who went to China and they ended up stealing something from the supermarket and they were arrested. These were, I would say, villagers somewhere, but you see how their government came in to rescue. That's when you see some of these Americans saying they are proud of their country, that's what it means. What they did was wrong for sure. Morally, it was wrong. But their government had said, okay, these are our citizens. We are going to defend them, bring them back, then we can deal with their problem or punish them. But if it was Uganda, it would say, after all, we have so many people here. Those ones, do whatever you want to do with them. So it is that kind of the way how our governments would be reacting and defending the Ugandans, both within the borders of Uganda and outside the borders of Uganda, by signing clear and bilateral agreements that would feel, or people would feel part of it. People would feel that I have a country that cares about me, then I should also care about it. And then we would find at the end of the day, knowledge transfer would also begin moving from countries where we are back to Uganda. But when you think of, okay, if I was to convince a person to go and we have an industry or something, or a project set in Uganda, the bureaucracy that I will go through, the corruption, the way how they will suffocate you and you say, why do I need to go through all this? Why maybe can't I just sit here and relax? But that is not building our country. So I still argue that as ANT, that's why for us, we believe that one, if there is a leadership that is based on good leadership that is based on accountability, good leadership that is based on public sector management, good leadership that is based on people who have the zeal to work, so that we avoid, one of the things that is killing Uganda is because of hegemony, the bureaucracy, the level of wages. People are competing in terms of wages. But if there was equality, Uganda is working for everybody. Who would not be saying, okay, Timothy graduated yesterday. He's a journalist. For me, I have been maybe in such and such an office, which is maybe higher than Timothy. How come Timothy is now driving a car of 300 million? And yet I have been in service for 10 years. I have not yet even managed to buy a small car. And then I also say, okay, now since where I am, I can also become as corrupt as possible, or I can end up, Timothy, I'm sorry, if they probe into this labor externalization, at one point you will find it will involve human trafficking that ends up that most of our people are dying outside there for whichever reason I may not know, and it is some lucrative trade somewhere. But if that's why I would be interested in the documentary. Exposure is one of the tools that we can use to fight nearly all these vices. That's why I would still argue that they should have allowed, if government also wants to fight some of the bad vices, whether corruption, whether the bad vices that are in labor externalization, by allowing a documentary, like what Serwanja, the investigative journalist, had brought up. Let it play. And then okay, now what you would be doing is they pointed on this either office. They pointed the gap here, let's go there. That's how government would work. And that is the role, I think, Timothy, you as a journalist, you are not supposed to always expose what is good, even the wrong, so that the public should know. Or it would help my sister who is being now convinced to be taken somewhere to say, as you go there, be conscious. There is X, Y, and Z that is taking place. So my sister or my brother will be able to question, you want to take me? What is the salary? What is the working condition? What is this? Am I allowed to access this? Where are my rights? And so on and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I see some messages coming through and I'm going to get to those, but I want to give Boaz the last bit of this. This is the biggest thing. From reliable sources, I have heard that there was a bilateral argument happening between Saudi and Uganda. That's one of the reasons that they refused the video to be able to be broadcasted there. But also from reliable sources, like Francis has been alleging there, from reliable sources, some of these companies have big people. Like the last IGG said, Justice Lady Irene Yagonja there, that some big people are hiding behind the president there. And he has said labor externalization is not bad because it's good because some greener pastures are good on what remittances is coming to this country. How do we resolve this impasse, Boaz, and also give your concluding remarks to that?
Thank you so much, Timothy. Indeed, if there were not big people behind labor externalization who are also aware of the problems associated with it, we would not have seen this documentary, toppled by the police. We would not have. In fact, the government would have been like, oh, let's get involved. Let's know what exactly is going on. What did the journalists find out that we couldn't find out from these people that we cannot reach? Because the Ministry of Labor cannot go to each and every single person. Of course, they should have data, of these people that are externalized or that go abroad to work. But I do not want to expect that as we know our country, I cannot at all expect that they will follow up everyone that has gone out, right? But since they know that they cannot follow up our fellow Ugandans who go abroad, when they see such a documentary, they should be interested in understanding what are the problems associated with it. But indeed, the act of the police and their excuse that they gave is a simple indicator of who is behind this labor externalization. I also want to say many cases that we have heard of people alleging that their body parts have been taken out without their knowledge, that people wake up and they find themselves in the hospitals. We cannot at all conclude that there is also no human trafficking for not organ donation, but organ extractions, and you have to ask yourself, if someone has full rights, like employment full rights in a country wherever they are, like myself, why should I give out my passport? Why should I not even have the right to have a conversation with my family on phone? Why should my family or the labor agency, in Uganda, I heard they call them labor agencies, which take them, why should they not even be aware? Or if they're aware, why should they not inform the family that Boaz is unwell, but he's getting treatment? And this is the exact diagnosis of his unwellness. So this act of the police, for me, was the conclusive indicator that, again, as you mentioned, Timothy, that the government knows what is going on. Those big people who are probably not even representing the government in a way are aware of what is going on and are benefiting and are reaping revenue from our young and old persons that are being sent abroad, especially to the Middle East. And to this vice, I really hope that the Ministry of Gender can come back and interest themselves in doing a census, a practical census, Because we also know that there are people, there are individuals. I have had through this, one of the interviews, that some people go independent of labor or human resource agencies. But what is the role of the embassy, of the embassies, wherever? They should be able to know, how many Ugandans do we have in a country XYZ, and be able to also do a census of who is where, what are they doing, who is their employer. Then they can be able to support them. Otherwise, we cannot at all find our people in a good state. But the most important part, which again was your question, Timothy, about bilateral agreements. I can assure you that because the government of Uganda has failed, to find proper employment for our fellow Ugandans, they see it, as a favor when these other countries, when they're in bilateral agreements with these other countries, that they are taking away these unemployed Ugandans, right? So they see it as a favor because there is a reduction of unemployment in Uganda. And of course, they are also getting remittances. God knows where these remittances end, right? So knowing all this, wouldn't it be even better that the government, in their agreements with these other countries, that the government tries to push for better rights for our fellow Ugandans that are going abroad? Wouldn't it be their job? I think that is where we should start from. This is where our ministers, our commissioners of labor at I think this building used to be called Simba Manyu House. I don't know the name now. They should interest themselves in protecting Ugandans and the labor agencies and the labor unions in Uganda. In the parliament, we have also a labor union, the representatives of the labor union. What are they doing? They are not speaking out. Even when this documentary was stopped, we did not see the representatives of the labor union speaking out publicly about this situation. So who do I go to if I have an issue that I would like to speak out about? So in a nutshell, it is not my responsibility. It is not the responsibility of political actors to protect Ugandans. It is a responsibility of the government to protect Ugandans both in the country, in Uganda, within the borders of Uganda, but also those outside Uganda, especially when they go out of the country legally with the right documentation of their departure. So to that, I would like to thank you and also appreciate everyone else that has been listening in, and thank you so much, Timothy, that you've kept this conversation active and lively.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think the question, I'll get to it there. The lady you were talking about from Saudi is called Judith Nachintu. She was allegedly, her kidney was harvested from her body, and the company that was in the saga here is called Nile Gates Treasure, that was there. And this is something that went on, and she received peanuts for this. She's paralyzed. She can't be able-bodied to help. She went for greener pastures, and really life was tough there. Also, very sad news that our Minister of State for Foreign Affairs was able to arrogantly say, why should they travel there? They should stay here. And that's the debacle we get in there. But Francis, I didn't give you an opportunity to say your closing remarks in a minute, but someone, John here, sends a message and says, thank you, Timothy. Now I want to know from our guests, what do we think Ant's next move to gain popularity both in and out of Uganda on their side there? So respond to that and also give your closing remarks. If you could please keep it in 2 minutes so that we have overshot by some minutes there.
Well, thank you, Timothy, and to our followers, listeners on the different platforms. This has been a good conversation, and I'm saying we are Ugandans and we are not going to give on Uganda. The first is that I will give our listeners hope that for those who have not yet interested themselves in what ANT stands for, I would encourage them to go and follow up ANT, and you see that the component that is lacking, or the ingredients that is lacking in Uganda to be able to move forward, is what ANT is bringing. Leadership that is based on values, leadership that is based on accountability, leadership that is based on transparency, leadership that believes in a good public sector that is well managed, and of course, with governance. And all this, once it is in place, that's why we're able to go and teach the people to start believing in their country, and then to know their rights and roles, and then to know what role they are supposed to play. Like as we have said, if we are to fight corruption, exposure is at the top list. To be equipped with information, we expose these people as much as we can. We ensure that once we have people who understand what governance is, what is public administration and management is concerned, we shall have cut down the bureaucracy so they can't hide under bureaucracy to become corrupt. And then we know that the collapse of these institutions, we will rebuild them and then be able to have a country that works for all of us. Then what are we doing to make sure that the ANT is popularized outside Uganda? If I must be sincere, this is the responsibility of all of us. But yes, like such a platforms of engaging each other and discussing so that more people know what ANT stands for. And then like a person already knows that I'm the ANT coordinator for USA. Like if you know the relative who is here, you can tell them, find out Francis, because we always have, like in the USA, we always have monthly meetings of our chapter to discuss what is happening at home and how best we can always contribute and be part and partial of the transformation agenda to see that our country moves on smoothly. And participating in these dialogues is the way to go, and it will keep us strong and nothing will break us. But what I would say, it is important to grow leaders. It is important to have an informed society that will be able, that will build on. Even if right now we change the leadership, we are just changing guards. But if the population, moral decadence that is in Uganda is still there, still within few days, you will again see a lot of things going astray. You will be people like people who have washed and then they are drying under sun. And I have always said that we would be smartly dressed going nowhere. So we are in this together. Let's join hands, come and join ANT. For we have seen everything stems from leadership that respects values, that is accountable to people, that respects or has a public management ethics and structures to build our country, for God and my country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francis. To the last question of how to, or how are we popularizing and promoting ANT in Germany? For example, I'm able to contact. We do not have monthly meetings as the Ugandans in Germany or in Europe. However, we have direct contacts. At least every year we have had so far 3 meetings that have happened also together with some leadership from Uganda that has been to Germany. Additionally, for me, I find it that as equally as it is important for us to, engage and meet, also support the party here in the diaspora, I think even more important are the Ugandans. Is each and every one of you on any of these platforms listening in, have you actually promoted ANT? If you're a supporter of ANT, have you shared some information about the ANT, our values, what we stand for, our constitution, to your closest friends or even family members. So I would like to only say, as it has happened for my case, that I have talked to some of my family members, including my wife, that I have intentionally requested her to support the ANT. I have taken my wife to the office of the ANT, where she was able to even, get information and directly talk to the leaders of the ANT. So how about each one of us, try to say, okay, I am going to invite and educate my family members about the ANT. Let's say 5 people at least, at the very least, you recruit 5 persons, that would be supporters of the ANT. Of course, our contact lines as a party are open. Our office in Kampala is also open, and we also have regional coordinators like Madam Aboki, who is the Western regional coordinator, or even the ambassador Edith Sempala, who is right now at the Twitter space. She's the women coordinator as well. And I'm sure that if you reach out to these persons, they can give you enough information that you can share throughout to your friends and to family. I think Ugandans who are on the ground, they are able to even help more to expand the gospel about the ANT better, because it is still the people in Uganda that are able to vote, since we do not have a functioning voting system that would enable us to vote from the diaspora. So this is what I would suggest and also encourage our people to be doing. Right now, at this moment, I noticed that we have lost Timothy, but I have understood that he's coming back in a bit. Although I want to appreciate each one of you that have taken the moment and the time to listen in. Thank you so much.
Is Dr. Ganze still online, or Musinguzi? I mean, Gumisris, are you still online? Because we seem to have lost Timothy.
I have got a notification that they are having connection problems. So it seems this is the reason why they are not online.
And that is a part of what we discuss about infrastructure development, because we ought to have laid a strong cable as a country, because there was also a saga around the internet cable that was laid in Uganda as compared to other countries like I think Kenya and Rwanda. I think that's why Rwanda opted not to tap, although there could be some political issues, but did not want to tap from our cable going to, they decided to use the other route. So all these are issues to do with the infrastructure development, because everything builds on that.
Absolutely. I also find it important to build our infrastructure, and not just the roads that the government is always talking about, but the telecom infrastructure systems are very, very important. Although we see that the government is prioritizing completely different things than those that are helping us in this time.
Yeah, yes, you are right, Mr. Boaz. And that's why for me, when I talk of basic infrastructure, is all that it takes for example, for education to thrive, for health services to thrive, for security, for agriculture, name them, for water, people to access water. There should be like infrastructure that will aid the delivery of all those services. And once we have it, the rest of the developments will follow. For example, if let's say if we talk about water, if there is accessibility to water in every home, then it means that even people who are in Karamoja, they can be able to establish kitchen gardens. And even if there is a dry season, they can use, because they have water within their vicinity, they can be able to have kitchen gardens, and maybe can reduce on the level of malnutrition and lack of food at that level. And then you find that is catered for. So with a lot of infrastructure, so many things come and people think out of the box. So for Karamoja, for example, for a person to establish a kitchen garden, something like that. So to be creative like that, but even when they can't get water to eat or to bathe, so will the person think like that? No. Think of education. Like if it was that every school can access internet, and then maybe children would access even reading books online, e-libraries, and children can access learning materials and so on. And maybe since it is everywhere, maybe perhaps we would have had all children go in line, and also those in villages access. So you find, even when movement was limited, but think of schools in up country, these communities know each other. It was easy that from each and every community, they have their teachers who would attend to children. So all these, think of health. Like for example, in where I come from, for people to access an X-ray, they have to move to another hospital. But think of a situation if the hospital had this equipment. I ever witnessed where in a maternity ward for a woman who was going to produce, they were lighting candles to provide light because it was at night, that even the lantern did not have kerosene. But if the infrastructure was there, that if it is Health Center 3, they have installed solar power where there is no rural electrification. So you find all these, they are interwoven in one or another. Think of a situation where roads have been opened and constructed very well without corruption. You see small towns mushrooming. You see where they take electricity, people begin now doing some welding, those who are doing popcorn, and these ideas, people have them. Yeah, but infrastructure, basic infrastructure must be there. Like as I've talk even about security itself. If roads are constructed and so on, it is easy that for police to patrol, for police or the army to move from one place to another, and so on. So all these I see as opportunities, and as you said, Uganda has the resources it takes to build all these. Like for example, why should a person privatize the gold mines and saying, okay, let's mine this gold? We should establish gold reserves in in Bank of Uganda. And like Uganda has a certain percentage. What other way, how can Uganda preserve resources or its treasury if it doesn't invest in that gold? You come and privatize it. Isn't that madness? So now, if you want to give, but if you want to give for the country to grow and flourish, How do you privatize, like Uganda itself, a Uganda commercial bank where people can get loans? You privatize it. Like everything in Uganda is under, the whole of the Ugandan economy is under the foreigners. Like if they decided to withdraw their money, Uganda would collapse. And therefore we risk to dance on the wheels of those people because we control nothing. We control nothing. Yeah. Those who steal money, instead of saying, okay, let's establish a factory, it will give jobs, we will export, we will have something to export and so on. They go, chase people away, evict people from land, and then those who can, they establish houses. They not even think creatively. Like then recently, it's when you are hearing now people want again to resell those houses. Have an estate to sell 1.5 billion. Every month it fetches 200 million. If it does, continue, it is a good business. Why are you selling it? So all these different things. And yet, one factor like this, identifying a need. Like I will give you an example, although this one is in Congo. The minerals they have, the chips that now are on demand, that's where they mine the mineral to go and construct chips that are put in a car. Now, let us assume that an industry was in Congo for manufacturing those chips. How many people would get employed in Congo? Similarly, in Uganda, if we added value on our minerals, how many people would be? Some of these countries here survive because of services. Generally, less people are involved in agriculture, for example. So it is only services, but they have something they are selling outside there. They are not always receiving. Yeah. But for us, instead of government thinking like that or enabling, creating an enabling environment, that's why you hear the coffee. It was going to be handed to Painet, something like that. But instead of encouraging local Ugandans and say, okay, we have identified somebody who is struggling in processing coffee, we can encourage that person to do that, and then we can begin exporting the coffee. Yes, I agree at first the stand that the president had taken, saying we can refine our oil. Although I did not agree with the lack of transparency in the oil sector. And now when it came to the pipeline, the poor mechanism of how they had designed the pipeline without putting into consideration the environmental aspects, even the land where it was going to pass, people were being evicted, the big wigs coming in, so that when compensation comes, again, they're the one jumping out. So like a country that does not work for all of us, you create thieves around you, people who are nobody, urging that there should be a gang which can steal from you. But you know, a candle will lose nothing by lighting other candles. Instead, there will be more light in the room and people will not converge on only one candle and suffocate it. Yeah. It's what we would be doing in Uganda. And we have the potential. We have the potential. I always see here how they struggle to produce food. But in Uganda, I'm like, you throw a seed there, it germinates on its own. And boom, you have. We have a potential. How organic food, even in Germany, you know, how organic food is very expensive. Very expensive. But we would be exporting organic food. But because of lack of even infrastructure, because I've told you, basic infrastructure. Think of telemedicine, that where a doctor who is based somewhere can treat all people, but the infrastructure is, do people have internet? Can people, maybe like as how me and you we are talking, so on. Yeah, if that infrastructure is not there, the rest will not. Yeah. If the innovativeness. Think of a situation where when TikTok came, do you see how the young people in Uganda ran crazy? Although I don't agree with how they use TikTok, is to get more views, abuse a few people here and there, get more views, and then you get a peanut. But let us assume if it was being used for, like, for example, study purposes, this and this, how much would be? And then young children to also play with technology here and there. Yeah, for me, I'm old school, my age. That's why you were seeing even on Twitter, I thought that once I have joined the Twitter, then I'm done. But the rest, so then the young children would know this, they play around with these things. And that's why we keep suffering from brain drain. But now a few of us who are thinking that, okay, if I have the opportunity, I should go back and invest back home. Now you find that the conditions are bad. In our institutions, you have seen the saga of Centenary Bank. I'll begin with Stanbic, where a person who is employed would keep withdrawing 1 shilling from a series of customers and depositing it on whether the girlfriend or fiancé. Now the Centenary. Now a person who would even go get a loan and then maybe invest or do something tangible would say, it could be a trick, they want to take my property. So the moral decadence within society. I'm not blaming it only on government, but even these other institutions that are also private. For us to come back and teach our people, look here. And of course, supervision. Like, are they doing the right thing? They are used to be training people who were the chief administrative officers during our time, training them, and then they understand what public service means. Yeah, so that we have leaders that are well groomed, they understand. Because once this country works for all of us, I think everybody will enjoy it. Everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You see, these developed countries, even America, you apply for a job, they don't even ask you for a transcript. No, they don't ask you who is your relative. No, or whom you know. And when they are interviewing, for sure, there are interviews where you go, you say, yes, this other guy was smarter than me. Yeah, because they are looking for the best. And that's why you find they keep moving up. Right? There is, there is competition. Like I have a friend who works in a bank called Capital One. They have a team. One team is in cybersecurity to defend the bank. The other team is in cybersecurity, but to try to hack so that they find the loopholes, vulnerabilities, like they are racing each other in as far as intelligence is concerned in the same institution. So I believe that I would say once the infrastructure is there, we can replicate, we can learn. But it is quite a challenge. Oh, sorry.
No. I'm very much happy that we myself especially, and I hope also other people have picked a lot. And most of the things that you've mentioned, I can confirm them also to be the same for Germany in many aspects. But again, our country has a journey that it is, taking, and I hope that we can be part of this journey of transforming our country holistically, not just politically, but in a holistic sense. So thank you so much, my brother Francis. We should keep this conversation by ourselves, maybe on a phone call or in a coordinators meeting. And thank you so much, Dr. Ganzi Isharaza, for also being available still after our colleagues had a power shutdown, which again is a huge conversation of what Alia mentioned about the Simba Dam and so on. Again, thank you very much and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Wonderful evening too. Bye.